The Muslims of Al Andalus were in trouble. The Christians to the north were constantly at war with them. Toledo had fallen. All the Ta'ifas were within reach. Their doom was inevitable. For a moment, it looked like Muslims were about to be expelled from Spain. However, to the south, a new empire was emerging, a religious movement born in the hot desert of northern Africa that would become a force to resist the Christian advance in Spain. The Almoravid movement was founded by Abdullah ibn Yasin, a scholar from southern Morocco. He belonged to the Sanhaja tribe of Berbers. His people were mostly Muslim, but they had a very limited understanding of the faith. Abdullah had traveled to Al Andalus to study Islam and had returned with the mission to preach it to his people. He wanted to unite the Berber tribes in the name of jihad, just as Prophet Muhammad had united the tribes of Arabia. He was invited by a man called Yahya ibn Ibrahim, a tribal chief of a sub-clan of the Sanhaja, to teach his tribe. Yahya had just returned from Hajj, and he had realized there was much that his people didn't know about Islam. Ibn Yasin accepted the invitation. This was around the year 1035 CE. Ibn Yasin tried to enforce a simple and rigid view of Islam on Yahya's tribe. He introduced the punishment of brutal floggings. Everything from adultery to minor mistakes in prayer were punished severely. This, as you might expect, made him many enemies. When Yahya ibn Ibrahim died, Ibn Yasin was thrown out. He, however, was just getting started. He visited another sub-clan of the Sanhaja, the Banu Turghut. The leaders of the clan, two brothers, Yahya ibn Umar and Abu Bakr ibn Umar, saw a great amount of potential from their partnership with Ibn Yasin. Ibn Yasin started Islamizing the tribes and united them. Eventually, his followers got powerful enough that they were able to declare jihad against the tribes of southern Morocco in 1054 CE. It was after this victory that Ibn Yasin took to calling his followers Al-Muratibun. The word probably comes from its usage in the Quran, where it means a band of people gathered to fight. The name itself was a very powerful thing. It came from the Quran, so it showed that these men were united by faith, and anyone, regardless of birth and tribe, could join. Al-Muratibun was later deformed into Almoravid. At the time, the empire had begun to emerge. It extended from Sijilmasa to Adagast. However, in 1056 CE, Yahya ibn Umar was killed and his brother Abu Bakr became the leader. 3 years later, in 1059 CE, Ibn Yasin went to the Atlantic coast of Morocco to preach to a tribe called Barghwata. He was killed there. Abu Bakr was now the sole ruler of the young empire. The core of the empire was made up of the desert tribe of Sanhaja and the mountain tribe of Masmuda. Around 30,000 men could be mustered up when needed. The empire was truly something to behold, considering how quickly it had formed. In 1070 CE, a new city was founded to serve as a capital. The city was named Marrakesh, which is where the Arabic name for Morocco comes from. Soon after this, there was a rebellion in the Sahara. An old rival tribe had revolted and Abu Bakr needed the Sahara to keep his trade going. Abu Bakr led an army south and left his cousin Yusuf ibn Tashfin in charge. When he returned, Yusuf refused to return power to Abu Bakr. Abu Bakr was instead told politely but firmly to leave. He spent the remainder of his days trying to secure control over southern Morocco and Ghana without ever challenging Ibn Tashfin. Ibn Tashfin was in many ways the first ruler of the empire. He sent a delegation to the Caliph in Baghdad, Al-Mustazhir, who gave him a formal written investiture of the government of the Maghrib in return for an oath of allegiance, basically lip service. Yusuf extended his control north. Major cities like Fez, Tlemcen, Saleh, and Tangier were brought into the Almoravid fold over the next years. These conquests had been very peaceful. Mostly people welcomed the Almoravid, and older leaders were allowed to stay in power. The empire only relied on gold from Ghana for administrative and military expenses. Taxes weren't common. In fact, the Almoravid were very much against un-Islamic taxes and basically only collected jizya from non-Muslims. Maghrib was secure under the Almoravid, and now Ibn Tashfin looked north, across the Strait of Gibraltar. After the fall of Toledo, Seville was under threat from Alfonso VI of Leon Castile. It's not known which Taifa invited Ibn Tashfin, but well, in July 1086 CE, he landed on Iberia with 12,000 men. He was greeted with enthusiasm by the locals who set up markets for them. Later, he was joined by the rulers of Seville, Granada, and Badajoz. Alfonso was busy with the siege of Zaragoza at the time, but he decided to crash the party and met the Allied forces at a place called Zalaca, or Sagrajas, to the northeast of Badajoz. The Allied force defeated the Christians, who were forced to retreat. The Allies wanted to pursue them, but Ibn Tashfin was reluctant to stay in Al Andalus for long. Alfonso had been defeated, but by no means was he broken. Alfonso began to harass the Muslims again. The Ta'ifas were once again threatened by the Christians. Various cities and forts that had been abandoned by the Christians were retaken. Once again, the Almoravids were called on for help. Ibn Tashfin arrived in Al Andalus again in 1088 CE, where he was joined by the rulers of Seville and Granada, while the rulers of Almeria and Murcia sent support but were absent themselves. Ibn Tashfin laid siege to the castle at Toledo. Before Ibn Tashfin could do anything about the fact that the Almoravid were less than useless in siege, the tensions amongst the Taifas were starting to make themselves apparent to Ibn Tashfin. The ruler of Granada, Abdullah, couldn't shut up about his brother taking over Malaga and splitting off, while the ruler of Seville and Murcia couldn't stop bitching about each other. Fed up with their crap, Ibn Tashfin called on a council of religious scholars to adjudicate on the dispute between Seville and Murcia. The council decided in favor of Seville. Murcia withdrew its support from the siege. On top of that, reports came in that Alfonso was coming to help the besieged castle. Ibn Tashfin said, "Screw this, I'm out of here," and returned to Morocco. Ibn Tashfin blamed the fiasco at Toledo entirely on the Taifa rulers, and rightly so. He decided that he would either return as the undisputed leader of Muslims or not at all. In 1090 CE, he landed in Iberia again and forced Granada and Malaga to surrender. However, he again left Iberia, but this time he left his nephew, Sir Ibn Abu Bakr, to continue his work. Ibn Tashfin started efforts to declare the Taifa rulers unlawful because of their impious acts. Seville, feeling threatened, tried to make allies with Alfonso, further pissing Ibn Tashfin off. In 1091 CE, Sir Ibn Abu Bakr took over Cordoba and the Guadalquivir Valley. He even defeated a Christian army which was coming to the aid of Seville. By the end of the year, he forced Seville into surrender. Another Almoravid army took over Almeria and Toledo in the same year. He forced Badajoz into submission. However, Badajoz tried to strike a deal with Alfonso, asking him for military support in exchange for Lisbon. Sir found out and took over the whole kingdom in 1094 CE. Valencia was ruled by a puppet of Alfonso and was protected by Al Cid. Almoravid forces tried again and again to take it over but were defeated. Eventually, in the summer of 1097, Ibn Tashfin arrived in person to lead the offense. Various battles were fought and won against the Christians, but in the end, where the Almoravid force was powerful in the field, it lacked in siege and was unable to take a single fortress of importance. Nonetheless, by 1099 CE, after the death of Al Cid, Valencia was taken over, despite the valiant efforts by his wife. By 1100 CE, Zaragoza and Almoravids were the only Muslim rulers in Iberia. Ibn Tashfin celebrated by declaring his son Ali formally as his heir. Ibn Tashfin died on the first day of the Islamic year 500, which was 1106 of the Common Era. He left behind an empire in total control of Morocco and Muslim Iberia. The empire was not only powerful, but also very popular amongst its subjects. However, it had failed to achieve any territorial victories against the Christians, with the exception of Valencia. Toledo and the Middle Tagus Valley remained firmly under the control of the Christians. It's said that before Ibn Tashfin died, he gave his son 3 pieces of advice. And like all good sons, Ali wasn't listening. The first advice was not to piss off the people of the Atlas Mountains and other Masmuda tribesmen. The second was to make a truce with Zaragoza and keep them as a buffer between him and the Christians. The third and final one was to honor the people of Cordoba. Ali spectacularly failed to act on any of them. Ali ibn Yusuf ibn Tashfin was very different from his father. He was born in 1084 CE, with the Almoravid Empire well established. He was an urban man. He never lived or perhaps even visited his ancestral homeland in the Sahara. He was only 22 or so when he came to power. There were no disputes of succession because his father had secured allegiance for him in his life. While he was a good man in general, he lacked his father's energy, especially in Al Andalus, where he had put his brother in charge. His brother Tamim ruled out of Granada, which was effectively the capital of the Andalusi part of the empire. Murcia was controlled by another one of his brothers, Muhammad ibn Aisha, whose last name is his mother's and not his father's. It shows the importance of maternal ties in Maghreb. The Almoravid conquest of Spain had slowed down by the time Ibn Tashfin died, but in 1108 CE, Tamim Ibn Yusuf ibn Tashfin laid siege to Euclis, east of Toledo. Alfonso found out and sent an army to defend. The army was crushed decisively by the Almoravids. Their strength on the battlefield was on full display once more. However, after the battle, their weakness was also on display. The Almoravid forces were unable to take the fortress, despite their best efforts. Their lack of siege skills was again apparent. They couldn't reduce the fortress, and only managed to take it when they pretended to withdraw and the fortress garrison opened the gates. They returned and fought the garrison, took over the fortress. Christians in nearby fortresses abandoned theirs as well, and the way to Toledo was open. The next year, in June 1109 CE, Alfonso died. His only son and heir, Sancho, was killed in a previous battle with the Almoravids. Ali thought that it was time to attack Toledo. Almoravid forces ravaged the countryside and took cities and forts around Toledo. However, when they attacked Toledo itself, the garrison held out. Their weakness in siege was on display again. They had to end the siege and go home after some weeks. In 1110 CE, the ruler of the independent Taifa of Zaragoza died, and the Taifa was cannibalized by the Almoravids. A man named Ibn al-Hajj, an Almoravid veteran commander, was installed as governor there. He extended his power all the way up to the Pyrenees. This was the last time a Muslim army would reach those mountains. This was the first of Ibn Tashfin's deathbed advices to be neglected by Ali. Ibn al-Hajj, along with Muhammad ibn Aisha, led a large-scale expedition into Catalonia in 1114 CE. While the expedition found moderate success, the army was ambushed on the way back and both commanders lost their lives. A great loss for the Almoravids. In 1117 CE, Ali himself landed in Al Andalus and took an army up to Coimbra. He was able to take the city, but the city had to be abandoned soon after because it was difficult to control. This, along with the ambush 3 years prior, was a serious sign that Almoravid power was waning. As soon as the Almoravids stopped expansion, their empire became unstable. Throughout the period of their success, they were very popular. They were considered to be a godsend against the Christians. Their taxes were low, and overall, people liked them. However, most of the ruling elites were descendants of Ibn Tashfin's great-grandfather, Toledo ibn Yasin. Andalusian Muslims were almost completely excluded from the elites. Not only that, but the Almoravid elites were distinguished from the locals. In short, the Almoravid elites were an alien minority. I'm pretty sure there were people calling for a wall to be built across the southern tip of Al Andalus to stop the illegal aliens from coming in and taking their jobs as well. In 1118 CE, Zaragoza was besieged and taken by Alfonso the Battler of Aragon. Different Alfonso than the one we've previously been talking about. Ali sent a major expedition to take back the land that was lost, but the army was decisively defeated at Cotanda in 1120 CE. One after the other, northern cities fell to Alfonso. As Ibn Tashfin had warned on his deathbed, the fall of Zaragoza led to much damage to the Almoravids. Just 3 years later, in 1112 CE, another one of Yusuf's warnings was tested, as Ibn al-Athir, a contemporary historian, writes. The Emir al-Muslimin, Ali ibn Yusuf, had appointed as governor of Cordoba Abu Bakr Yahya ibn Rawad. On the day of sacrifice, when the people had come out to enjoy themselves, one of the Abid, the slave soldiers Ibn Abdun warned against, grabbed hold of a woman. She cried out to the Muslims for help, and they came to her aid. A serious fight developed between the Abid and the people of the town, which lasted the whole day. There was open warfare until night came and the two sides were separated. When the news reached the Emir Abu Bakr, he gathered the faqirs and the principal citizens, Ayyan, who said you should execute one of the Abid who began the disturbance. But he refused and became angry. The next morning, he prepared the arms and equipment to fight the people of the town. So the Fuqaha, the principal citizens, and the young men of the town mounted and they fought him and forced him to flee. Then they laid siege to the palace and stormed it, and he fled from there after a severe mauling. They then looted the palace and burned the houses of the Almoravids, pillaged their property, and drove them from the town in disarray. When the news reached the Emir al-Muslimin, he was seriously concerned. So he collected the troops of the Sanhaja, Zenata, the Berbers, and the others and formed them into a great army. He then crossed to Al Andalus in the year 515 to attack them and then laid siege to the city. The inhabitants fought him as people do when they're defending their lives, their families, and their property. When the Emir al-Muslimin saw how fierce the resistance was, he sent envoys to them, and they sought peace, which he granted on the condition that they compensated the Almoravids for the property they had stolen. Then the capital quietened down and the fighting stopped. The revolt at Cordoba was damaging to the Almoravids, but it was not fatal. The fatal blow would come from the Atlas Mountains, from the first warning of Ibn Tashfin. From those mountains, a religious movement, whose origins somewhat mirror the origins of the Almoravids themselves, would bring about the end of the Almoravid regime. See you next time.